Hello, I'm Nicole Chenard, award-winning dietitian and passionate performance coach for special forces, professional athletes, and executives, bringing you today a conversation with a very hardworking colleague of mine, licensed marriage and family therapist, and most well-known as sex therapist, and owner of the private practice Speakteasy, the one and only Brittney Slater. Welcome, Brittney. Brittney is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a specialization in sex therapy and over 15 years of experience helping couples build stronger, more fulfilling relationships. In addition to her private practice, Speakteasy, Brittney is the creator of a groundbreaking series of sex therapy and couples counseling seminars designed to provide in-depth, high-quality guidance from the comfort of your own home. Combining cutting-edge neuroscientific research with traditional cognitive, behavioral, and emotion-focused therapy, Brittney empowers couples to deepen their connection, enhance intimacy, and navigate relationship challenges with confidence and understanding. What we're going to cover in today's episode, one thing Brittney focuses a lot on that really helps clients is the neuropsychology around sex and how pleasure works in the brain, especially the differences between men and women. Science and psychology research shows that there are a lot of different approaches to thinking about sex that could help couples. Now, there's a catch-22. Being healthy and having overall lower stress levels and a positive mood makes having sex easier to do and more doable. But sex can also help lower stress and boost your mood and health. This is why we have Brittney here today, because I don't know anyone who doesn't need help with this. And oh man, I must confess, it's going to be really hard to stay focused during this conversation because Brittney and I originally bonded over the deep pleasure we get out of anything that has to do with speakeasies. My fantasy, Brittney, is that you and I are recording this episode in the shadows of a speakeasy hidden behind a wall. Most people walk by, don't know exists, that requires a code for entry. And we're sitting across each other in a horseshoe-shaped burgundy leather seat in the back of a room with cocktails and dim candlelight. Is that what you're picturing, Brittney?
Oh my gosh. I'm really sad we're not doing that right now, actually. I think we need to re-record another episode in that exact environment. That would be perfect.
What would you be wearing, and what would you order as a cocktail?
Definitely would be wearing some sort of tight scarlet dress. I feel like you just have to do that as a speakeasy for sure. That's like my vibe. And definitely an old fashioned. Hopefully, preferably like a smoked one. Yeah, I'm a whiskey girl. Yeah. What about you? What would you be ordering?
I would want your old fashioned, but I would get something with tequila, some kind of.
Okay. We can switch.
Yeah, I would want to share.
Yeah, we can share. Yes, love that. I'm so excited to be on here. Thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
What do you help people with? What are the biggest questions you get most often?
What I love to help people with is having better sex lives. I'm really big on pleasure and people experiencing pleasure in all forms of their life, but especially in their intimacy. And one of the things that I really love, and I know we bonded over this, that you're very science-based and you teach a lot of your clients about that. I really love that side of therapy. I think talk therapy is great in its own right, but I really like using kind of like evidence and research to help clients understand things, because I'm a big proponent of if you can understand why it's happening in your body and how it affects your brain, you're better equipped to cope with it. One of the number one things I see in sex therapy is people just coming and saying, hey, I'm not enjoying my sex life, or honestly, what I see the most is desire discrepancies between men and women. And it's really common for a lot of men to say, hey, I want more sex in my marriage. I don't know why my partner's not interested. And for me to get a wife who's like, yeah, I don't know, it's just not a priority for me. I don't really enjoy it. And we're here because, he's annoyed with that. That's one of the number one issues I see in sex
Well,
therapy.
good for him for wanting to do something about it.
Yeah, I know, right? Sometimes I do say that. I'm like, hey, upside to the, even you can find it annoying, but upside to this is he finds you super attractive and still wants to be in bed with you. You gotta take that with a grain of salt, that that's not a bad thing necessarily, even if you find it annoying sometimes.
Right. So what would your tips be? I mean, everyone's different, but
Yeah.
what are some good tips that help with that, based off of science?
Typically, what I tell people is that the difference between quote unquote men and women is about less than 1%, right? So there's not these huge differences necessarily. Yeah, I know, right? It's like biologically, there's only a 1% difference on average between, I know, right? Between men and women. We're not so much like from Mars and Venus as just like, different places on Earth. But that being said, that 1% does have a big effect, especially in our sex life and how we respond to sex. And whenever I'm giving these kind of talks, I always put a quick disclaimer out there that when I'm using terms like men and women, these are general ways to describe opposite ends of a spectrum. Like, again, it's a way for me to say categorically, a lot of, quote unquote women or people who identify as women tend to fall over here. People who are men or identify as more masculine fall over here. But I tell everybody, take this with a grain of salt. You might identify more with some of the research. You might be a man that identifies more of what I describe from a female perspective or vice versa. These aren't strict. If you're a guy, you can only experience it this way. Or if you're a woman, you can only do it this way. It's more an easy way to describe opposite ends of a spectrum. So I always like to put that out there and say, take it for what you will.
More like how men and women complement each other rather than how we're different.
Yes, exactly. That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
But also, so what is the 1% difference? I didn't know that. There's only 1%.
Yeah. So the 1% difference is how, when it comes to sex, is how we respond to sex differently in our brains. And there's two parts of your brain that I tell people to focus on, which is your nucleus accumbens, which is your anticipation of pleasure part of your brain. It's the part of your brain that's like, ooh, something good's about to happen, and it lights up and there's all this activity. And then there's the amygdala. So this is your emotion control center of your brain. It plays out into a lot more in terms of the stress component. It regulates our emotions in our body. And the interesting difference is that for men, when they see something or feel a touch that is pleasurable to them, whether they're looking at a pleasing image, maybe their partner walks in the room and they're looking really sexy, or, they get stimulated in any way, what it does is it activates the testosterone receptors in their brain and their spinal cord and their penis. This sends a message to the brain to cause blood to rush to the genitals, and then there's arousal. So what this means is that for men, visual imagery and touch are very heavily associated with their sexual response. And what happens is that there's a really strong response in their nucleus accumbens, their anticipation of pleasure. This is why a lot of guys look forward to sex from an early age. They get those positive feedback loops where they experience arousal, it feels pleasing to them, and they look forward to it. The big difference here is that for men, touch can often override their amygdala response. So if they're stressed, if they're anxious, if they're depressed, especially when they're younger and there's high levels of testosterone, for men, they can jump right into bed and it's not really a problem. And sometimes I'll hear my female clients say, "Oh my God, like we're so stressed right now. Like how can they be thinking about sex?" And I'm like, because of how it works in their brain, it can override their amygdala's response.
So they're getting more pleasure from that part of the brain, the nucleus accumbens.
Yes, there's a stronger response in the way that works in their brain. So for most men, they associate it from a very early age in a positive way. There's a stronger arousal response. So therefore, they, for them, touch and sexual stimulation can override fear, discomfort, pain, things like that. And kind of the important difference here is for women, it works a little bit in a different way. So for women, they tend to have very strong responses in their amygdala. There was a study done a little while ago about like men and women's ability to multitask. And I think like as a surprise to no one, women were a little bit better at the multitasking part of things, which can be a strength in some areas, but is actually really a drawback when it comes to sex. What this means is that women are able to focus on different things at one time. And because of that, it can be harder to shut down their amygdala during sex. So I always say, like, think of your amygdala as a light switch on a dimmer. For you to get aroused, you need your amygdala to be completely deactivated, especially for women, not feeling any stress, not feeling any fear, not feeling any discomfort. That needs to be completely lowered in order for arousal to happen. That's why I say for men, touch or stimulation alone can override any fear or discomfort and they can get aroused. For women, touch or visual imagery is not always enough to override that process. Their anticipation of pleasure is typically not going to be as strong as their amygdala's response to, hey, I'm stressed out at work right now, or I'm thinking about all the kids' activities for the next day, or this, that, the other. This is why you hear a lot of women who will talk about, yeah, I was having sex, but I was thinking about the laundry that I needed to get done or something. And you're like, why does that, right? You don't typically hear men saying, like, well, yeah, I was having sex with my wife, but I was thinking about my work project for the next day. They're focused on the moment, whereas women can get a little bit more distracted. And it's because of how that works differently in the brain.
That just doesn't seem right.
I know it seems right. I'm kind of like, our ability to multitask is actually the thing that kills our ability to experience pleasure sometimes.
I remember you telling me one time a lot of men are trying to figure out how to get their wives or female partners to have sex with them. And they're like, oh, maybe if I buy her something, she'll be happy and get excited. And you're like, no.
Yeah.
Actually, the answer is to take away a stressor.
Think of your brain like a car, and you have gas and you have brakes, right? And everything for gas it's all the reasons your brain is telling you to have sex. It's like, my partner looks really good and I find them sexy. Maybe they smell good. Maybe you're in a really romantic setting and you're feeling all these feel good feelings to your partner, all these things. Like, it's all the things that your brain is like, yes, like this is someone I want to sleep with. And then your breaks are all the things that tell your brain not to have sex. You're stressed, you're tired, you're hungry, you're thirsty, blah, 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 blah. And if you think about this from a biological standpoint, if you were running from a tiger, right? If you were being chased by a predator, you don't want any of your brain's energy going to giving you an erection. You want your brain's energy going to survival. So that's kind of why we have these dual systems. Now, because of how that pleasure response works in our brain, men tend to be very sensitive to the gas. They tend to be very sensitive to all the reasons to have sex. And their breaks are a little less sensitive, again, because of all the reasons I explained, right? They're not going to be the ones that, things are necessarily going to impede their sexual desire, their response cycle. Whereas women tend to be a little bit more sensitive to the breaks. Like, there's all these reasons why sex doesn't feel possible, and they're a little less sensitive to gas. That's why when I see couples, like we talked about, I hear all these men that are just trying to amp up the gas side. They're like, well, I bought her lingerie and I bought her a vibrator. I don't know why she's not using it. I'm like, because you're pressing heavy on the gas. And just like in a car, you can press on the gas all you want, but if there's a foot on the brake, that car is not going anywhere. So the strategy is more to remove the pressure on the brakes. And that is something I work a lot with couples on.
And since there's so many health benefits to that, give me some examples, or give our listeners some examples. How do you take pressure off the brakes? How do you get that amygdala to shut down?
I think that is twofold. It's partly individual and partly couple. For a lot of couples, I'll work with them on identifying what those breaks are. Where are your stressors? This is where it ties into the work you do a lot with nutrition. I hear a lot of people who talk about how tired they are. I'm like, well, what does your diet look like? Are you exercising? Like, are you leading a healthy lifestyle? Because if you're not, that's going to lead to those fatigue levels. You're not going to have the energy to want to have sex. You're not going to have the energy to want to stay up and be even intimate with your partner. That can be a big barrier that I work with people around looking at their stress levels. It's pretty common. You see a couple, especially with young kids. I'm in the throes of this right now. I have a 7 and a 3-year-old. After work can be chaotic. You're running to different activities. You're getting dinner on the table, all these things, and the stress levels are really, really high. So working with a couple on, are you both helping manage the stress, or does one person feel like they're responsible for everything? We hear a lot about the mental and emotional labor of life and of a household, and I do see a lot of women who feel like they carry a lot of those burdens. They feel like they carry more than 50%. So taking some of that stress and making it a little bit more equitable can be a really helpful way to increase drive. It kind of sounds funny for some people. It's sort of like, well, how is me? I always tell this funny story. He gave me permission to share it. I had this one couple I was working with, and we were talking about this, and the wife was like, "Yeah, I just feel so like exhausted by the end of the day. I've been running around doing a million things. I don't want to have sex." And we talked about taking off some of the burden. And she said she hated doing dishes. And so she's like, yeah, if like I cook dinner, if he could do the dishes at night, that would, and I could go upstairs and take a bubble bath, I could go relax, right? I would be able to de-stress, and then maybe I would be in the mood for sex. And the husband, he was so funny. He was so cute. He had all these, and a lot of guys do, they have all these great intentions, but he was like, okay, but what can I do that will turn you on? He kept going back to, how can I turn you on? And she's like, do the damn dishes so that I can go relax. And he's like, okay, no, I know that will help you relax. And we went back and forth, and he finally seemed to get it. And he's like, okay, so like, I'm going to help her relax. I'm going to go do the dishes so she can go upstairs and take a bubble bath. And then he kind of paused and he's like, so is it me standing at the sink that she finds sexy? Is that image sexy? It was so funny. And like I said, he gave me permission. I use that example all the time. I was like, no. So things like that.
Think it.
Yeah, he just kept going back to, so is it me with the gloves on? Like, is that a fetish she has? And I was like, no, that's not it. It was really funny. He was so sweet. He was so, and again, like I see that with a lot of my couples. The guys are so well-intentioned, like they really love their partners, but they're just coming at it from that, how do I press on the gas angle? And they really struggle with the, like, you got to take the brakes off angle.
Yeah. And it's funny, like you said, men have this visual component, but I think for women, at least me, if I see visual clutter, that would pump the brakes on for me. Or if someone's using their phone, it's like a huge distraction. And then what do you tell couples who travel a lot, or like one of the people in the couple travels, or or is in the military and things are totally unpredictable, because that's who I work with a lot.
Yeah.
How do you handle, what are your tips for any of those really high stress couples?
The high stress couples. Yeah. That's definitely a challenge, especially if it's sporadic. Hey, when are you coming home and things like that. And one of the biggest things I say is make sure that you're communicating and you're connecting intimately before you have sex, because I'll do this work sometimes with military couples or even people who, police officers, where they have these really stressful schedules of, hey, I'm only home when you're awake, maybe twice every other week, right? So there can be all this buildup and all this pressure around, well, if we're going to have sex, we have to have sex when I'm home and when this is available. And this can be a big thing. But again, that pressure around it is the part that can increase the amygdala's response.
Yeah, the pressure. Mm-hmm.
To having it feel like a lot of pressure. So even though it's like, okay, logically, we want to connect, we want to be sexual with each other because we don't have a lot of time, that mere fact is the thing that actually makes it less likely for the response to be pleasurable, especially for the female side of the partnership more often than not. So what I usually say is, I know it can be, intuitive to like just want to cram it in, but really making sure that you're slowing down and you're communicating with each other. You're communicating about the stress, you're communicating about what you can do to help each other, and then really making sure that you're connecting intimately. Even if you're a couple that travels a lot, making sure you're having those touch points with each other. You're contacting each other every day, talking about your day, even something like, send each other flirty texts. It can be like, keep up that sexual tension with each other. Don't make everything all about, okay, when you get home from your work day or from your travel, we just have to jump right into bed and get it done. I'm really trying to smooth that experience out and keep the pressure off of it.
If the guy started texting something like, hey, I'm going to put my phone in the other room when I get home, and I don't have any meetings planned, and I hired someone to do the dishes.
Yeah, I hired a dishwasher.
I don't have time to do them in my sexy gloves. And setting up the de-stressors, the acknowledging the fears and the stressors and saying, I took care of it.
Yes, exactly. That's huge. Like taking the mental labor off, I just mentioned, was a really great suggestion, right? Not getting home and saying, hey, I want to do something, I want to go on a date tonight. Where do you want to go? do we have a babysitter, this, that, and the other, coming home and, hey, I took care of everything because I just want to be able to focus on you and have us connect with each other. That can be a super helpful way of making sure that you're connecting even in those high stress environments.
Yeah, that makes sense. Hey, I'm coming home for a day and I got a babysitter. I made reservations. Be ready at 7. Wear this. Like,
Put the tight scarlet dress on and we're going out, right?
on.
Yes, yes. There's an old fashioned when you pull up to the restaurant. That would be my dream. If I pull up to a restaurant, it's like, we have your drink ready. We have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
So you gave the example of the couple where the guy was like not getting it. Do you have another example like that? Kind of totally different?
Of someone just not getting it?
Yeah, but then eventually getting it once you explain it to them.
Yes. Yes. I think sometimes it can seem like I come off as telling men, you're doing everything wrong when it comes to sex. And, I will say, like, I'm like, no, it's not that you're doing everything wrong. How we approach sex can be very male oriented. And when you incorporate the female side of things, it can be really helpful. You can have a better sex life. But I will say, I see on the reverse side of things. So this is throwing a bone to the men. I see a lot of this misconception where sex sort of gets deprioritized in the relationship and it's made to be normalized. I have a lot of people that come in, and again, it can be really common for a husband to be sitting there and saying, I don't get it. We had kids, and all of a sudden it seems like my wife just hates me. We used to go on dates and she would kiss me passionately. We had this wild sex. We got married, and now we've been married for a few years, and she doesn't even want to kiss me. She cringes when I come up and I hug her. For a lot of guys, this can be really devastating, especially if they're not understanding where it's coming from and they're just interpreting it as, my wife doesn't like me anymore. My wife's not attracted to me. I think for self-confidence, that can be really painful for a lot of people. For a lot of men, it's just like, I'm not attractive anymore. That is a big issue I see in sex therapy as well. A lot of times the wife will come in and say, no, I'm still attracted to my partner and I like them, but just, I thought sex just, it's just not really important anymore. I didn't think that was going to be a priority later on in life. I hear all the time, oh, doesn't it just kind of fade off for everybody? And I say, okay, well, even if that was true, I don't think it is, but even if it was, why do we want to normalize that? Why do we want to just normalize that? Like, you can only have good sex in your 20s and then it just like sucks after that. So that's a misconception I see for a lot of people. And then I do work with a lot of couples on, like, hey, if there's anything else in your relationship you just stopped out of nowhere, if you just stopped talking to your spouse, that wouldn't be okay. If you just stopped cleaning up the house or doing any chores or any housework, that wouldn't be okay, right? So there's all these things in a relationship we expect to continually keep going. But for some reason, I do find that effort towards your sexual relationship can sometimes be like, oh, this is normal that we just stopped doing it. It's not a big deal.
Okay, so what if, curveball?
Yeah, sure.
What if it's the reversal where the woman wants to have sex more and the man doesn't?
Come on, yeah, and that actually goes back to the science of how men and women differ and actually how it changes throughout our lifespan. So I mentioned at the beginning that guys can be very sensitive to imagery and touch in their sexual response. Again, they learn that from an early age. We all hear the joke about, they're in 8th grade math class and the wind blows and they get an erection kind of thing. And so for a lot of men, they heavily associate that sexual response, the ability to get aroused and get an erection, with their sex drive. They're linked very closely. Now, this is as we age, our bodies change, things might get a little harder to function. And so for men, after 35 and especially after 40, their testosterone really starts to decrease. What can happen is it impacts that arousal cycle. It might be harder to get an erection. It might be harder to maintain an erection. For men, sometimes they can directly associate this with a lower sex drive, essentially saying it's harder for me to get an erection. And honestly, there can be some shame and some, mental health stuff around that. And so they slowly pull away from it because they don't understand what's happening in their body, which a lot of times can leave their partner feeling really unsatisfied. And I will see a lot of these couples too, exactly what you're saying, where the woman's like, I don't get it. I thought this was every guy's dream. I'm in my 40s and I still want to have sex every week with my husband or every day. And he's just not interested. So that can happen. And a lot of what I do with couples is teaching men about that and saying, hey, here's why your sex drive might be lower. And here's what, again, going back to that gas brakes idea, I'm like, you've always relied on your gas, right? But as you age, men tend to get a little more sensitive to their brakes. And if they don't understand why or how that's happening, they back away from it. So that's where I go right into that research. And I'm like, this might be your time where you might have to look at the brakes. And that might be something that is now inhibiting your sexual response. So it's interesting how it can like weave and change for different people throughout the lifespan.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I mean, there's so many differences, and obviously each individual and couple is different. But what are some things that come up throughout the day that would amplify the brakes and the amygdala response? A bunch of different examples so that our audience can be more aware and then talk about it and do something about it.
Yeah, great question. Oh my gosh, so many things. Pretty much think of anything that doesn't bring you joy in life, right? If you're running late to work and you hit a red light, those cortisol levels in your body are going to be going up. You're going to be experiencing stress. If you have, work deadlines that your brain is focusing on and you're worried about, that's going to be causing stress. If you're picking up the kids and you're running them around to a million activities, you got to walk the dog. Like you said, that I like to call it visual noise. You come home and you see the grass needs to be cut, or I have 8 loads of laundry to do. Anything that's not bringing you joy in your life are things that can impact those breaks. And a big thing, again, is just general health. And I'm sure you talk about this all the time, is your diet and your exercise. If you're not feeding your body with good nutrition, if you're not moving your body, again, you're going to have higher levels of stress. You're going to have higher blood pressure, all these things. And even those factors can come in quite a bit and impact your sex brain.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds to me like if sex is not on the table, if you're not there yet, if you're like, all right, this is just not happening, the next best thing to do with your partner would be a workout together, because then your hormones will be happier.
Yeah.
And that automatically gives you more oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, and you'll associate that with your partner, and that will help the gas.
Yes, 100%, 100%. And I think that comes in for couples a lot. I'm a big proponent of being healthy together, right? Either going for walks together or going to the gym together, or if you like different types of workouts, like me and my husband personally, we're huge into working out, but we like totally different types of workouts. He'll go for a 50-mile run and think that's fun. And that's literally my worst nightmare, but I'll love to go to like a dance class. And I mean, he likes dancing at weddings, but he probably wouldn't be the person at the front line of a Zumba class or something.
Right.
But even that is cool. When we get home, we talk about it. He'll talk about like, oh, I ran faster today, I broke a PR, or I'll say something like with strength training, like, oh, I lifted this much today. And like that, even that can be a bonding activity. But
yeah, you both value being active. So then you're sharing the same value and you're communicating about it. Boom.
Yes, exactly. And it's also attractive. It's attractive to see your partner taking care of themselves. Like sometimes I'll do all this high level brain stuff with sex therapy, but at the end of the day, I'm also like, it's unattractive when you get home and someone's sitting on the couch in their 3-day-old sweatpants and they're not taking care of themselves and they're eating a greasy pizza. I mean, again, I do this every Friday. So, but if it's every single day,
too much, or just complaining, or they're like, I used to work out, now I don't, or just I want to eat healthy, but I can't. It's like, well, you can't. Let's do it.
Yes, exactly. Being healthy physically and mentally is attractive. And we all struggle with stuff. Like, this isn't to say if you're depressed or anxious, you can't be sexy. But if you really think about that, if you're coming home and your partner is excited because they're feeling healthy, you're both like feeling in a positive mood and you're encouraging that with each other, and you're looking at your partner and they're working on being their best selves, that could be a really attractive quality. So yeah, I think for a lot of people, exactly, if you're not ready to like jump right back into bed, look at your individual health. Are you taking care of your body? Are you taking care of your mind? And if you're not, that's a great place to start.
Love it. Thank you, Brittney. Obviously this is part 1.
Yeah. I know. We could talk about this like forever.
I think these are really good tips, and you have so much to offer everyone who's listening or watching, hopefully both. So for those who are not ready yet to meet with you one-on-one or as a couple, I know you have other services. How do people find you?
Yeah, so everyone can go to my website, speakteasy.com, and I have all my information there. So I do host online seminars that are really good options, especially for busy couples. It's a series of online seminars that go over everything I would go over in a traditional therapy setting. And you can complete them right from your own home. You can log in and do the lessons at any time. They come with a workbook of exercises. You can find that online at speakteasy.com. I also have an Instagram, speakteasy MA.
Brittney has these seminars that you can look for, or you can be brave and get what you want and meet with her directly. Until next time, thank you so much, Brittney. I have so many more questions, obviously, but we'll talk in a dark room and then we'll discuss the next episode. And thank you so much for being here. I really love your brain and your enthusiasm and your vibe.
Yeah, thank you so much. I know I think we should definitely meet up and record this in a speakeasy next time. So
we're doing it. It'll be members only.
Yeah. Awesome. Exclusive invite. Sign up if you want to be part of the exclusive invite after this episode.
Exactly. Send us DMs. We'll get you there if you pass the test.
Yeah. I love it. If anybody out there has a speakeasy connection, let us know. We'll host an event there.
Yep. Get the ball rolling.
Thank you, Nicole. I appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.